Hi, everyone. This is Walt Bayliss. I'm the host of the Business and People podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me the professional sports agent, Cejih Yung. Cejih runs cejihsportsmanagement.com and has represented some of the biggest athletes in the world, including the Paralympian Mackenzie Cohen, who's just signed on with Adidas through Cejih Sports Management. Cejih has represented Olympians, Paralympians. He has some of the biggest names in sport, and he's been through the University of Washington, achieving his MBA, then through Harvard Business School with negotiation. It is my absolute pleasure and thrill to welcome to the show, Mr. Cejih Yung.
Hey, Walt, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure, man. It's absolutely fantastic to have you here. So you've been through some amazing things in your career. I noticed that you've had a lot to do with software. You've had some neural programming kind of sales experience through there.
Yeah.
You've done business and MBA and now into sports management. How did you get to that position?
Yeah, well, so if you see my career, there's a lot of different companies from a pretty broad spectrum of industries, but I've always been in a sales role, always in some type of business development, outbound sales, needing to bring in new business, bring in new logos to whatever company or team I was doing. And, and that's really where I got to sharpen and refine my skills as a salesperson and then eventually as a business development executive.
Nice.
And then, down the road, I was able to pair that with my passion for sports, my passion specifically for working with athletes, professional athletes, and helping them achieve their goals, not so much in the arena or in the pool like Mackenzie, but more outside. And, luckily I had a great foundation and great experience with sales. And so it allowed me to kind of marry, my passion in sports, helping people with a very applicable skill set.
Fantastic. I'll dig back into the sales in just a little bit because I find that fascinating, and I think a lot of people would like to hear. So you've got some amazing athletes on your books right now, and you're talking about not just in the pool or on the track or performing in front of the cameras, but their offline lives as well, and that full I guess rounded management. Is it? I guess each individual athlete needs to have something tailored for them for that.
Yeah, definitely. Each athlete, we have Olympic fencers, we have Olympic gold medal swimmers, professional athletes that we work with, every single one of them has a different story to tell. And that story can really fit in a specific market. And that's really what we try to do, is we try to help these athletes find their niche market.
Yeah. Cool.
And if we can do that, then we can capture an audience. And if you can capture an audience's attention, as now you can start parlaying that into, advertising deals, sponsorships, or appearances. And so that's really the approach that we take, and we try to develop that strategy with each athlete.
So each athlete, has a small window in terms of their professional athletic career, and then they would need to pivot from that into, I guess, a lot go into professional speaking, some go into their own brands and positions, etc. Do you have like a clear path when they're at the height of their career, like Mackenzie, for example, right now, heading towards Tokyo? Do you have a plan, like a path that they are set up for?
Yeah, I think what you're asking is, while they're competing, and then, once they retire, is the path very clear? And, a lot of times as we start to work with an athlete, year over year, they really start to get an idea of what their position might be, post athletics once they're done competing. And for some athletes, their biggest years can actually be during that time. One of our very first clients that we ever worked with, Carolyn Joyce, we didn't partner with her until she was several years removed from competing.
Wow.
And was already retired. And so that's where we really started to build her brand, into women's leadership. And, now she's the CEO of her own company and runs, a couple amazing events, has an online platform. It's really exciting. But, I think for most of the athletes right now, the ones who are training for the Olympics, I can guarantee you that's the only thing that they're focused on.
Right, absolutely. They need to live, eat, sleep, and breathe it, right? Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you have no idea. Yeah.
So they leave everything else up to you, I guess. And that's where you kind of, I noticed on the Cejih Sports Management side that you have this kind of rounded approach. You look after the business, the negotiation, everything outside of their athleticism so that they can focus on their medals, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we try to manage everything, we try to manage all of the business stuff, essentially, everything that's outside of the gym, outside of the pool or the track. Yeah. That's really what we're responsible for. and each athlete is different. Some athletes want to be kept in the loop, very aggressively along the entire way. But right now we're about 10 months, 10 to 11 months out from the Olympics. And probably the biggest part of my job is actually just keeping them free.
Right.
And keeping them, just
letting them train and doing all that sort of stuff.
Yep. Letting them train, letting them travel to competitions, and really only hearing from me when they absolutely need to and when it's something very, very big. But other than that, just letting them know, hey, here's kind of what we're working on. You won't hear from me again until some of this stuff starts to develop, yes or no. But, just so we're on top of it for you.
Yeah, cool. That's so great. So Cejih, I said I was going to dig back into the sales environment because I know that kind of ability to self-generate, being able to go and knock doors, go and find opportunities. That's really a skill set that sets a lot of people aside. Is that something that you've always had intrinsically inside of you?
Actually even from a young age, from a very young age, whether it was, selling, I think one of the first true door-to-door sales experiences I had was doing, and I think it was in the 7th grade.
Wow.
And our middle school was doing a fundraiser, and they would give us a box of candy bars, chocolate bars, and they would say, okay, go and sell these, and try to sell as many as you can. And it was like, whatever, a couple weeks, let's call it a 2-week window. And I went, and my mom walked with me, and she would stand back, and I would walk up to our neighbors' doors, and eventually, the neighborhood, and just boom, boom, boom. And I would, sell them our chocolate and whatnot. And I think I made it through maybe halfway of the box.
Wow, cool.
And and in like our first night, and my mom was like, okay, that's nice job. Do you want to go home? And I was like, no, let's just go through the same loop of houses one more time.
Wow, cool.
And I think most people would wait a day, or they'd go through a different loop. But I was like, no, let's just go through the same loop one more time, and let's just see what happens. And it didn't occur to me that might be weird, or maybe kind of pressing a little too much. And I think I made it halfway through the loop, and all the candy was gone.
Oh, that's so cool. And were you hooked from that minute? I mean, like that becomes something that you can hold on to the next time you have to, approach an Adidas or somebody or an athlete to be represented. Do you hold on to that experience knowing that you've got the grit to see it through?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one of those things where it's really hard to know in the moment. When I talk to up and coming, sales reps or agents, whatever, and I try to let them know, like, hey, my first job in sales out of college was selling hot tubs.
Yeah, right.
And selling swimming pool chemicals and hot tubs to people who had nice backyards. Like, that was my job. And you can learn a lot from that. It may not be the most glamorous product that you're selling, but I think that's actually a huge advantage, because you're going to learn the skills and the chops that it takes, so that eventually when you do find that thing that's yours, that you're super passionate about, you've got the skills and you're ready to go. Nice. And you're ready to approach a huge company like, Adidas or UGG or Coca-Cola, Dasani, all those types. And you have the skill set. But trust me, it's a lot easier to fail and fail early, when the stakes aren't so high.
When you're talking about salespeople, like a lot of the people who are listening to the podcast, Cejih, are entrepreneurs, or they're sales. They're self-driven in some way. They're looking for that push forward. How would you, I guess, give them some advice to? There's a saying here in Australia that says "steal the medal," like really to be able to get that strength needed to push through those kind of rejection and barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what you're asking is how do you keep going when you're getting told no, or even maybe physically getting the door slammed in your face? I think probably some of the best advice that I ever received was, it's never a no, it's just a not now. Mm-hmm. And, I think as an entrepreneur, where you're really the one who you are the salesperson, a lot of times you're many different departments, you're wearing many different hats, but, the sales starts with you. And I've always kind of found that if you actually do get someone to tell you no, that's not a bad thing, because you can actually do a lot of upselling right from that point. There's a famous quote: the sale starts at no.
Yep.
And I think as entrepreneurs, you are going to encounter that way more than anyone else. But the nice thing is you can also make changes and adjustments to help and win over some of your very first customers.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that that's something that is, while very tough and can definitely be a grind, is a huge advantage. You know, whether, unless you're an entry level rep, and you know, maybe they're like, okay, if you can give me just a slight discount here, I can work with you. And now if you're a rep, you have to say, I have to go ask my supervisor. That's not really within my decision-making power. But, you know, as an entrepreneur, you can be like, hey, I'll do you one better. And you can offer them something new, and you can get creative.
I love it. And I do know, like, for most people who are listening to this on the podcast, they're not going to be able to see Cejih's expressions, but I love when he was talking, I'll do you one better. Like the body language was just right there. I just absolutely.
Oh yeah, I was ready to go.
Like one after my own heart, man. I absolutely love it. Yeah. So, Cejih, as you've gone from then a sales role, and you've had some incredible success in that sales position, then into a CEO role with Cejih Sports Management, how have you found the transition from employee to business owner?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, when I first started, there wasn't much difference when I was an employee, and then, you know, for my own company, and then the CEO, because I was still the only employee.
Right.
You know, but as we've started to grow, and we've started to bring on more clients, more athletes, even brands, you know, who trust us to help manage their business, what I think we've been able to do a really good job of is bring in other, you know, really good people to start to help me manage, you know, the inside of the business. Mm-hmm. So that allows me to go and focus on growing the business. And I know that, okay, I have a junior agent, you know, or junior agents who are working underneath me, and I'm able to mentor them, coach them, teach them, and which I never really had when I started.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that gives me the confidence to know, like, hey, you're going to be successful at this. It's going to take some time, but I'll help you and teach you along the way. And I think that's a big thing is, you know, as you are a business owner and you start to grow, don't forget to bring in other people to, you know, kind of cover your tracks, right? Like that's a really important part. And whether that's outsourcing, whether it's bringing an intern or bringing someone in part-time, or, you know, if you have the revenue and the income to provide an actual, you know, payroll and employees, it's very scary.
Yeah.
And because there's no guarantee, but I have found that it's been the single thing that's allowed us to experience a huge step forward in growth every single time. Doesn't mean we get it right every time, but when you do, you know.
I've heard from many CEOs and people in that position, business owners and entrepreneurs, that exact same phrase, that it was the bringing in of a key team member or team members, or even if it's, you know, somebody from an outsourced perspective, that completely allowed them to leverage their time and move their business forward. For a lot of people, Cejih, I hear this a lot, that they have that fear. So they're at the point when they're just frantic, you know, that startup phase when you're everything, you're the one employee, and they look at bringing in that employee or that part-timer, and they say to themselves, I can't afford it. How would you say to someone in that position that they will know when the right time is, and when should they actually take that leap forward, do you think?
I know that for me, it was always when I found someone who I was so excited about,
right,
that dollar amount that maybe I wasn't quite attainable. I found someone that I was so excited about bringing on that the confidence in me and my team to be able to pay them was, you know, was worth it, and it outweighed the fear.
Yeah.
Something that we did, you know, and I think a lot of folks who are probably listening, you know, when you're hiring someone and you're the CEO, head of HR, head of sales, usually the interview process is probably a 10-minute, 15-minute phone call, and you're like, all right, you're hired.
Yeah.
Let's see what you can do. Ready to go. All right. And there isn't much of an onboarding process or even an interviewing process. The best salespeople that we ever hired, we made them go through a more challenging sales process.
Got it. Okay.
And
so
yeah, that was
a little bit like, don't be so enthusiastic. Yes. Get the right people.
Yeah, get the right people. If you're a one man or one woman show, find some colleagues of yours, have them do an interview as well. You know, you can give them some questions, create some filters as well. You know, I think we have our sales process now, especially if it's a sales professional. I think there's 5 total interviews.
Nice.
that they have to do. And one of them is a live demo. It's a live demo sales call with an actual customer in the field who, we prepare the salesperson who's interviewing. We let the potential prospect, who's usually an existing customer of ours, who is open to helping, and we give them a prompt, and then they schedule a time and they go for it.
Wow, that's such a good thing. I've never thought of actually talking to existing customers and saying to them, hey, would you mind, obviously we've got your best interest at heart, and we're looking to bring on someone new in our team. Would you mind if this person came and spoke to you? Obviously that would be a last step in the interview process, but wow, what a great way to see if that person really is going to resonate with your customers.
Oh, absolutely. And especially, when we use customers who were with us on day one, and they actually are championing us. And they'll really help us vet out. It's the single best thing we've ever done in our interview process. So that would be my advice. If you're trying to bring on a salesperson or a marketing person, don't just let yourself, it's so tempting because you're like, I know people, I got my gut, and I know you're going to be great. Create a couple more levels.
Place than that.
Yeah. Create a couple more levels and you'll save yourself a ton of time, and it'll be worth it for that extra spend for sure.
Definitely. So have you seen your Cejih Sports Management stepping up over the years with those key people and key hires? You can actually see the lifts in revenue, the lifts in time, and all that kind of thing that you've achieved?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started, we really only represented athletes from one sport, which was Olympic swimming. And that was really kind of our bread and butter. It was our niche. And so that allowed us to be successful. And then as we grew and expanded heavily in that market, I could sense that, okay, we're starting, this is much bigger than just a Olympic swimming agency. We're a full service sports agency, and there's other athletes who would really benefit, but we need to go get them. And that falls on me.
Yeah. Cool.
And so while I was out there, doing recruiting and bringing in new athletes, I needed to make sure that, I had systems in place so that our existing business would, continue to grow and receive a high level of service. And now we've since grown, and, we do all different types of sports, looking to get into a Winter Olympics next. That's really big for us, but yeah, it started, from very humble beginnings.
Wow. Awesome. So cool. And as you're growing now, you mentioned Winter Olympics. Are you looking from a business growth point of view? Is your growth of company dependent upon more athletes representing, or is it about the current ones that you have and more opportunities for them? Or both? Yeah.
So no, that's a great question. And I used to think it was about, getting in more athletes, or at least taking the athletes that we have and trying to find bigger deals for them and really build out that book of business. What I really see as really helping us grow and grow successfully, while maintaining your core values as a company, which is so important, as you start to scale, they can really get lost, is just hiring other agents who can then go and represent either the current athletes that we have, or more likely they're actually going to be bringing in new athletes, but making sure that, we have agents, sports agents, marketers within our own company who understand, okay, this is the Cejih Sports way of doing business. This is the Cejih Sports way of marketing. And we're going to make you into a professional, or you're hired as a professional. Here's our culture. Now go and empower these professional athletes. That's how we're going to grow.
Nice. And how important is it that they talk the language, in terms of you're obviously going to spend a lot of time in locker rooms, you're going to spend a lot of time in training environments. How important is it that the agents speak the language of the athletes and the sport itself?
It is pretty important. I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker, per se. I think when you're trying to get into a completely new market and a new sport, it certainly helps. However, at the end of the day, that client and that athlete, they're hiring you for your business expertise. They're hiring you for, your proven track record of growth, of taking an athlete who is about to explode. And once they have that huge moment, in sports, in magazines, on live stream, on TV, that you're there ready to jump on it and capitalize.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So you would have been involved in those, relationship building positions with a lot of athletes. As you said, they're trusting you for your business acumen. Do you find yourself involved in their life as well as their training? Are they talking to you as a counselor sometimes? Are you feeling that kind of void for them in some cases?
Oh yeah, for sure. The intangibles.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a relationship business. It's a 100% relationship business, and you know, they're going to look to you for, you know, business advice. But you know, then eventually, as you start to grow, I mean, it's always going to be a business relationship. That's the most important thing to remember. Yes, you'll be friends, and you will have a friendship, but at the end of the day, it is a business relationship. But you know, you think about some of your best customers, you know, over your career, they're probably some of your closest friends too,
Yeah, true.
you know, and, or you've grown to become, you know, cause you've experienced wins and losses, and that's what a lot of times makes the stronger relationship. And so, yeah, they definitely reach out, you know, for advice here and there. And, you know, a lot of times it's just someone to kind of talk to, you know, because being a professional athlete can be very exciting, can also be a little lonely too.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure. I guess they have to focus in on
uh,
one specific goal and to the exclusion of all else a lot of the time.
yeah, and there's very few people who are that good in the world at something as, you know, as they are, and so it's tough.
What do you think are the characteristics of a champion?
Oh, that's a big one. What are the characteristics of a champion? I think that the ability that one of the things that I notice, whether it's, you know, champions on the field or even in the business world, is this really hyper focused ability this hyper ability to focus
Okay.
When it matters the most. You know, a lot of the best athletes in the world they can be super casual, sometimes even kind of shy. And then you get them either behind the blocks, you get them, you know, focused on an extremely difficult sporting scenario, and they are so calm, they are so focused, and there is nothing else around them. And they are going to execute no matter what. The stadium could be crumbling on top of them, and they wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
And to me, that seems to be a differentiator between, you know, the top 1% and the top 5% of professional athletes, and I would even say business people.
That's cool. And so I was going to follow that up with another question and ask, does that trait, the hyper focus, translate into a business success typically as well?
Yeah. So here's a great example. So when I was working in software sales, you know, we were on a sales floor. I mean, it's open. Everyone's, you know, they're just dialing. So we had a quota, and I think it was around 35 or 40 phone calls per day, outbound calls, cold calls that we had to make. And that was, you know, that was kind of the expectation. You had to hit a minimum of 150. So most of the reps, you know, throughout the course of their day, they would get in. You know, they would hit some calls in the morning, maybe walk away from the desk, make a little breakfast, come back and kind of space it out. And by the end of the day, they'd hit like maybe 25 or 30, something like that.
Yeah.
The people the reps who were always just crushing their quota, who were, you know, hitting all their calls, were doing it in a very focused 1 hour block. And they would just block everything out. I don't even think some of them wouldn't even have email up. They would block everything out, turn their cell phones off, be plugged into their computer or however they made their calls. And they would get not just the 30 calls, but they would get like 50, and it would be done, but it was always done within an hour, always.
Wow.
And so that's that ability to focus. And that was something that I learned, you know, from being around some of those high performers. And I was like, oh, wow, I need to try and, you know, I need to try to adopt that type of mentality. And
It's that bringing
yeah,
in, like we've heard the
yeah,
analogy so many times. It's like that magnifying glass, you know, that can be just showing a light, but when you pinpoint that in, it can start a fire. Like, and it's that absolute dedication to that one task at hand. I think that's a
yeah.
great analogy between the business and sporting world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make it clear, it always seems to be over a fairly finite amount of time.
Right.
You know, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who, you know, really advocate for, you know, I'm grinding 24/7 and stuff like that. From my experience, both in the sporting world and the business side, I think that some of the best performers have this ability they can just zero in on whatever that task is. and just crank for a certain amount of time, and then they leave and they go do something else, and their brain continues to digest, and they come back the next day and they're able to super focus. And then to me, it seems to be that, like, stress, recovery, stress, recovery cycle.
And actually, when you look at it from a sports perspective, that is prevalent everywhere, isn't it? It's like, train to failure and then recuperate. Like, and if we look at that from a business perspective, and we put a set of tasks in front of us, and if we take that same mentality and say, okay, train to failure, you have to do this until it is done, and then and then walk away, go and do something else, but get that singular most important task finished, and watch the steps escalate with success as you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So what's a typical day for you now, Cejih? What's a day in the life of Cejih Yung?
Yeah. So, I mean, a typical day for me, I'm more on the early side, and I like to, I can kind of make up my own schedule, but I live on the West Coast. I typically like to be up, around 6. I mean, nothing too crazy. And I might have just a little bit of time to myself. And then, once I'm kind of in the saddle, at my desk, I like to really just focus on, what needs to happen today to move the needle forward, whether it's on certain strategic deals we're trying to do, whether it's on events that we're producing and running. Where I'm really, really cooking is where I've already been able to delegate specific things to my team, and they can run with it. And that allows me to focus on, a lot of times just doing the actual selling or pitching, or, whether it's bringing in a new sponsor, trying to find a decision maker within a very large company so that I can pitch, some of our athletes or one specific athlete. That's a big part of my time.
Wow.
And,
cool.
I believe I'm most effective in terms of spending my time for my clients when I'm on the phone, trying to speak to decision makers. That's in my opinion, that's the best use of my time for my clients.
So a really super productive day means that you've looked at what we have to do. You've pushed out to the people that are around you all of the tasks that you can. They're on path, and you are able to focus on what you need to do to be able to bring revenue in, which is, I think, a great model. Do you use any? Do you have any tools to help you with that productivity set, Cejih? Do you have like a set of apps? Are you a task list and checklist kind of guy? What's your toolkit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CRM that we use right now is, we're still a small company, but the CRM that we use is called Pipedrive. I love it. It's very visual. I think that's why I like it so much. Yep. We in the past, we've definitely used Salesforce and whatnot, but I really like Pipedrive because I found that it allowed me to communicate with my team of reps the best. Perfect. And it teaches them, the different stages that a deal goes through, green white space prospecting, discovery call, contact made, validate, proposal presented, closing stages, and everything from, contract signed is what we have. And so that's allowed me to coach and teach the best. And that's why I selected that. Other than that, I mean, I guess I'm kind of old school, but I just try to use, a nice little notepad.
Nice. Very cool.
But I mean, you can see I've always had stuff here. And I think the biggest thing that I try to do, and I think a lot of business owners and leaders can relate to this, I try to just have 3 things each day, just 3 things. Just, okay, if anything, if you can get all these 3 done on this list today, you're doing pretty good.
It's a great day.
Yeah, it's a great day. And most days I think I might only get 1 or 2 done. But, and those are 3 pretty, but they're
I know what you mean.
Yeah, moving things forward. So, and I don't always have great days. I mean, I have days where I might be backed up from travel, or, was really busy the days before, and I haven't delegated stuff to my team, and I may get to none of those 3 things.
Sure.
But that's always a great indicator for me that says, okay, what happened today that you couldn't even get one of these 3 really important things done? So what needs to change? What do you need to do? Is it, do you need to stop and say, okay, let's organize, let's recalibrate, and then let's hit go again? And, that's, I used to get really frustrated by that, Walt, but I'm starting to realize that's okay. A lot of times it means part of the process, and usually means there's growth happening. It means something
definitely
happened that, you know, maybe you weren't really adapted to yet, right?
There was a swell, a bubble somewhere that you know has meant something has come into your world, into CG Sports Management, into your own personal world, and you had to, you know, move things around. And as you said, typically that's growth. Do you have like a review process daily? You know, do you go back over the day, look at what's happened, or is that a weekly or monthly thing for you? How do you review yourself and the team?
So right now I do weekly.
Cool.
So this was one of my big things this year was I wanted to very diligently start sending a Friday weekly recap.
Nice.
And you know, it's actually pretty entertaining, I suppose, but you know, it goes out to our whole company, our internal team, our subcontractors, our sales reps. You know, everyone's on it. And I highlight team members who've done really, really well, things of note. And then I think there's 3 different sections. The first section is cool things that happened this week.
Nice.
And I just bullet point them out. And then the next thing is neat things coming down the pipeline. And
Cool.
I share with them, you know, what's coming down that usually, you know, maybe only I know. And then the third thing is it's usually just story time with Cejih, or my nickname is Uncle Young. So and it'll be story time with Uncle Young, and I'll share, you know, a story maybe from you know, that happened within the week, or a lesson learned, you know, and we highlight positives and we highlight failures, but we always highlight the ability to learn.
I love it.
And so I try to do that. I used to do that just whenever I felt like it, but now I do it almost every single week. It's very rare that I'll miss. And I think it's made a huge impact on our team, especially because a lot of them work remotely.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, we always hear about leaders and CEOs sharing their vision. And I think that's a great way to do that, to make sure that you have that communication and encouragement, and I guess incorporating a team environment with Cejih Sports Management, which is really, really cool. Cejih, I'm so conscious of your time. I'm thankful and grateful. I know that it's evening where you are, and, you know, it's been a long day, and your time with us has been super, super valuable. I really love it. I've just got a couple more questions if I can.
Please.
What advice would you give someone who's just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey? We can take this from a sporting athlete, someone who wants to hit those goals, and assimilate that to a person who in the same space might be a startup entrepreneur, have that great idea and want to look out and getting onto their own. That person who has a goal in front of them, looking to achieve something, what advice would you wrap around that person to help them on their way?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a big one. Just because there's so many, I guess, different routes you could go. The one thing that I would say is if you have an idea, a lot of times you don't realize how much subconsciously you are thinking and reverse engineering that idea. Right. And I think the way that it worked for me was I had this vision. I was a full-time software salesperson, you know, living in Washington, DC at the time. But I knew that there was something else out there for me. And I knew that it was going and running my own business and my own sports agency. I just wasn't able to connect the dots on how exactly do I get there. And that was very scary, because you know where you want to be and you know where you are. You just don't know the plan to get there.
Sure.
A lot of times there aren't really people you can talk to who've done exactly what you've done. But my advice would be, just trust that your subconscious is actually helping you kind of reverse engineer the steps back. And eventually you will get to a point, you'll feel it in your gut, where you've worked backwards to the point where you work to the present, like today.
Yep.
And then it's just a matter of, you know, taking a deep breath and then making the jump.
Nice.
But I guess what I'm really trying to say is be patient. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're not smart enough and you haven't worked out the solution yet. A lot of times you're actually working in hyperdrive. You just don't realize it.
Sure.
And I think that's the nature of being an entrepreneur, is you get an idea and you just think and think and think, and you don't realize that you're actually even thinking when you're not.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that big goal that a lot of people have, you know, once you set that in motion and say to yourself that that's what we're going to achieve, your mind, the universe, the whole thing goes to work towards achieving that. And even though you may feel frustrated, you may feel like you don't even know where to start, you're overwhelmed and have no idea where to go from there, knowing that, you know, that conscious step-by-step approach to achieving something like that can happen at tiny incremental levels that you may not even realize. It can be a phone call today, an email, a jot of a notepad, and that is the step that's needed to move it forward. That is really, really cool advice. My last question for you, man. Cejih Yung has achieved some amazing things with Cejih Sports Management. Some incredible athletes around the world depend on you for their business and for their lives and the people you've put together. My question for you is, what's next? What's the goals that you're heading towards personally for Cejih Sports Management, for your people, your athletes? Tell me some of the things that we'll see for you on the horizon.
Yeah. So what's next for us right now, what's a big focus is we're trying to develop, sort of the next series of superstar sports agents within our company.
Awesome.
That's through mentoring, through coaching, through sales training. I think we're probably one of the only few sports agencies in the market where we actually invest in professional sales training for our agents, as if they were a BDR or an SDR rep. And that probably comes from my background in tech, but it's been a huge advantage for me. And it's something that we've done with some of our superstars. And so that's really what's next for us.
Fantastic.
Yes, as we try to grow into other sports, and that'll be exciting for me. But internally within our company, that's a huge thing for us is we've developed athletes. Yeah, we've developed pros, we've developed athletes, help them grow their brand. But now we want to develop agents who can then go and represent other athletes and help them grow.
I was just thinking that as you were talking, the development of your sales agents into being the best professional agents that they can be is the actual catalyst for then helping the athletes achieve their best business goals, for achieving your sponsors and their best representation. Like, everything starts with that development of the agents. So that is really super cool. Cejih Yung, thank you so much for your time. You've been able to mold some of the world's best athletes and develop business plans for them, help them achieve some things in their lives that they wouldn't have never done without the help of Cejih Sports Management. I'm really grateful for your time, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Walt.
Appreciate it, man.
Talk soon.